When an individual goes into a laboratory to test and repeat and to see and to verify a repeatable test, I say thumbs up to genuine science. Thank you for finding the cure to a disease. We love that kind of science. And yet there's a little category switcheroo that happens. We call what happened in the past science, taking a look at what we think is data, a dinosaur bone, what happened in the geological columns. We call it science because we then interpret an old earth presentation that somehow all this stuff just randomly came together, got all organized, here we are. Who says? Science. Problem with that is not science. Historical science isn't science at all. Now, these can be smart people. They can take a look at stuff. They can even do some tests in a laboratory about how things are composed, but they can't tell us how these things happen. Why? Because they weren't eyewitnesses. They can't bring it into a lab and test that process and repeat that process and observe that process. So historical science isn't really science at all. And yet, because of that little category confusion, the world puts a lot of stock in science. And so the kids are taught right in diapers that, hey, you evolved from primordial goo. You are nothing but lucky stardust. You came from billions of years of random chance. Who says? Scientists say. We tend to bow to the God science in our 21st century technological era, but it's not just the unbelievers. I fear far too many Christians are intimidated by the God science, and so they take what they are told by typically unbelieving scientists, not all of them, but by unbelieving scientists, and they try then to blend that with our holy book, which says something really different. There is clear historical narrative in Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He did it in a 24-hour day period. It is as clear as it could possibly be, and yet the scientists say, no, we're billions and billions of years old. What are we to do? Believe God's holy book? Or maybe could we just kind of import some of that and change what it clearly states and still maintain orthodoxy? To be clear, this is not an issue of heresy. There are good believers who are going to disagree with me, a guy like Ken Ham, but I would like to make the case that when we import historical science, which isn't science at all, in a subtle sort of way, we're actually unhitching a part of the Old Testament. We call it theistic evolution, that God didn't do it in 6 24-hour days, not all that long ago. No, He did it over billions and billions of years ago, and we think it's okay. We really haven't compromised much by doing that. But Kevin DeYoung would disagree. Theologian Kevin DeYoung, citing the many problems with importing historical science, which isn't science at all, into Genesis and calling it theistic evolution. Here's just one little problem with that position. Adam and Eve were not the first human beings. They were just Neolithic farmers among about 10 million other human beings on earth at that time. Hey, wait a second. That's not what Genesis says. God created just those two human beings. Adam, our federal head. That's what Romans 5 says, after all. You mean there were others? Why aren't they written about in the book of Genesis? Hey, great question. How's about because Adam and Eve were the first human beings? If God evolved the place, there were a bunch of other, really close to being people running around, I guess Neanderthals, but Adam and Eve, they must have just evolved just a little teeny tiny bit. Maybe his back wasn't as hairy. I don't know, but suddenly, voila, he's a human being. That is just one problem with theistic evolution, but there are more. Number 2 from Kevin DeYoung. Adam was not specially formed by God of dust of the ground, as it says in Genesis 2, but had 2 human parents. Hey, 2 human parents? That's not what Genesis says. Exactly. Number 3 problem with theistic evolution. Eve was not directly made by God of a rib that the Lord God had taken from the man. Genesis 2:22. But she also had 2 human parents. are we starting to see that taking something that was not observed, that is not repeatable, that is not verifiable, that is a worldview that is bent on providing a mechanism to suppress the truth in unrighteousness, should not be incorporated into our holy book? Houston, I think we have a few problems here.
Go ahead, Wretched One.
Besides the fact I'm wearing a cardboard helmet, Houston, you have got one of the biggest false teachers in the universe. Are you kidding? He is so rich.
How rich is he, Wretched One?
I can see his house from here.